welcome to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 45, or season 3, episode 9, and I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davidson. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing okay. Just a little tired. Was at the drive-in again last night.
Oh, cool. All right, well, we'll talk about that, because that's always a good time. Also with me yet again, as always, your other host, John Correa. How you doing, John?
Doing well. I am also tired, I guess. Yeah, we're recording pretty early today. Look at us being productive. This is great because this is the time of day when my street isn't busy. So, perfection.
We usually record early, but with this quarantine thing and with not having anything else to do, we've started slacking and recording later. But this week
we've decided to sleep in, record later by an hour.
Oh my God, we're such slobs, James.
What it is our gyms aren't open. So we normally Korea and I go to the gym after we record, but
I listen, we don't get into politics or anything with this show. We're here to talk about horror, but how funny was the people protesting for gyms to be opening by exercising outside of the gym? It's so you're just proving that you can do that wherever. Yep. Okay.
Let's jump into what we've done this week. I want to hear about Jacob's drive-in experience. Was it as good as the last one?
It was fun going back. Again, this is Mission Tiki out in Montclair. But man, it was crazy how busy it was last night.
What'd you see?
They were doing some more independent stuff. So last night I got to see The Vast of Night on the big screen. And for those of you who don't know, it's an Amazon original, and it's basically this kind of low-key sci-fi story set in the 1950s, and it's about these two teenagers who do radio work, and then they're starting to get these weird phone calls and radio frequencies, and it may be aliens, so they go to investigate it. And it's interesting because it's all in real time. It's almost like 1917, it just keeps going. And yeah, it really nailed the kind of 1950s aesthetic, and it got a bit deeper than I expected. And it was funny seeing it, in a drive-in theater, being a movie set in the 50s. So that was pretty cool.
And you say that it has that 50s aesthetic. That was actually going to be my question before you answered it. Does it have that feel of a 50s sci-fi movie then?
Yeah, they nailed down the fashion, the technology, and the style, and there's a lot of interesting cuts and kind of takeaways that they use those old big box TVs and kind of the Outer Limits style frequency stuff. So it did feel like it was set in the 50s.
And what's it called? The Vast of Night?
Yep, The Vast of Night.
Cool. Was there another movie last night? Was it a double feature?
Yeah, it was a double feature with the remake musical of Valley Girl. But
okay.
I hadn't seen the original, and I was kind of tired, so I left after Vast of Night.
I've heard, and I haven't seen it, so this is all just me talking out my ass. I've heard that the remake of Valley Girl is kind of offensive to fans of the original. It's that bad. Not offensive like it, cusses or deals with abortion or anything like that. It's it's gonna kill your childhood kind of a thing. So
well, not my childhood.
It was mine. So what have you been doing, Korea, with yourself?
Oh, me. Listen, I have not been going to the drive-in, unfortunately. That is a mission of mine. I was supposed to go out to get groceries, but then I drove 2 hours towards Palm Springs.
I love how the big thing you did this week was I was going to go out and get groceries.
Yeah, but then I wanted to go see some dinosaurs, so I drove 2 hours towards Palm Springs, and basically outside of Palm Springs, there's this dinosaur roadside attraction dinosaur exhibit with a giant ass long neck and a giant ass Tyrannosaurus Rex that is actually featured in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's got a big butt, Simone. Let's talk about your big butt.
Yeah. Exactly. So I had to make that pilgrimage. I had to go see that T-Rex. Obviously the thing was closed, but you could still be outside and see the T-Rex and the giant long neck and stuff. I'm definitely gonna go back. It's just weird because it's like one of the largest like roadside dinosaurs out there, but it's also owned by creationists, so that just intrigues me even more, like in wanting to see like what type of displays and stuff they have there. So that was my big adventure. And then other than that, just been like going through my watch list. I finally decided to go through the Amityville movies. And
Nice.
Let me tell you, the Amityville movies are so boring. Like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry to anyone who's a fan of that series. I haven't gotten to the cursed ones yet. I just watched the first 3.
Oh, okay. That's your problem.
The first 3? No,
yeah,
the first one is awesome.
The first one was boring. I was so bored. Like, it was just like they kept presenting cool stuff and then like did nothing with it. And then it just kept like going. Although I do have to say, I had a lot of fun with Amityville 2, The Possession. The whole family in the beginning was just like weird as shit and like had all this weird taboo stuff going on, and then like suddenly like you'd think that the film ends with like the big massacre, and no, it happens at like the halfway point. Then there's some like really dumb like cop stuff that goes on for like 20 minutes. That was boring, but then it turns into an Exorcist ripoff for like the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's so bonkers and dumb. But again, those movies don't know how to end, because suddenly it's just like, oh yeah, it's done, here's the house. Or is it? But nothing happened. It's just like, or is it? And then 3D was just like, I don't even remember that movie. Like, I just watched it the other day. I can't recall a single thing about that movie. So that's what made me give up on the Amityville movies for a little bit. I was like, okay, I can't. 3 in one day was enough for me. But also, I had some fun double and triple features. We after we got tired of Amityville, because we were originally going to watch all the Amityvilles in one day, and then Lindsay and I got really bored and angry after the third one.
There are not enough hours in the day for all 19 Amityvilles.
I would have done it. Well, at least through the cursed ones. So like it would have been the trilogy, then the 4 cursed, and then the remake is what the plan was. But so instead we bailed on that hard, and we watched the McPherson tape. But we double featured it or triple featured it, because the next day we watched another found footage. But we did Paranormal Activity 2, then McPherson tape, then Paranormal Activity 3, and then the next day we watched Troll Hunter.
Nice.
So we did a deep dive into my least favorite subgenre, followed by Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane, because I never watched 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I have to say I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, but I really wished no one said that it was. I wish it wasn't a Cloverfield movie. I'm gonna say it, like, that ending would have been so good if I wasn't sitting there going, "When's the monster coming? When's the monster coming?"
When it was written, it wasn't written as a Cloverfield movie. They just I think they tacked the ending and the name on. So
Yeah.
There's a reason why it seems so tonally different from the other Cloverfield movies.
But yeah, John, what do you think of the McPherson tape?
It's one of those ones where, listen, I love AGFA. I have all of their releases on video, but let's be honest, half the time the movies that they put out, the stories about the movies are more interesting than the movies themselves.
True.
I'm looking at you, Zodiac, or Zodiac Killer, I should say. Even though that movie still has a soft spot in my heart. Mostly I highly recommend to anyone out there who needs to kill a day, double feature Zodiac Killer with David Fincher's Zodiac, so you can watch like it be done right and then watch it be done trashy,
They actually did a double feature that I think at the Egyptian Theater a while ago.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so sad I missed it. But yeah, McPherson tape, for what it is, I think the story behind it, especially the fact that like it's kind of become like a thing where people believe it's real, and then even though like they've tracked down the special features on that McPherson tape are awesome with the newsreel and stuff, and they show like them be like, hey, people who think this is real, here's the director, the guy who made it, and he's saying that it's not real, and they go, oh, Well, I still think it's real.
Yeah.
I think he's a part of a government cover-up to cover it up. It's just like, no! We start pulling your hair.
Yeah, this was the 90s. This was the 90s.
Yeah, back when they made those, this was post-Cannibal Holocaust and Boggy Creek, but pre-Blair Witch. So you could still fool people. I mean, there will never be another convincing found footage movie thanks to Blair Witch, because Blair Witch got so many people.
Yeah.
Speaking of Blair Witch, I haven't really watched anything. The only thing I've seen is I got a screener for that movie Shirley, which is Elizabeth Moss playing Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, how is it?
It has its moments. It's not horror at all. But Elizabeth Moss's Shirley Jackson is pretty horrifying. She's a very unlikable character in it, but she still shows little glimpses of humanity. So where you're like, okay, is she a product of her environment? It's really kind of weird. But what I did do is I took advantage of the Arrow UK sale.
Oh, you got yours in?
I did get mine in. But the thing is, not so much the movies. I mean, I did get a few movies, but I got a bunch of the books. The Arrow books
are so good.
Nice.
And one of them is the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get that book for a while.
The whole time I was reading it, I was thinking Jacob needs this book. It is the thing is, these books, they're real little 100-page. They're about the size of a Blu-ray case, so they're easy reads. The Blair Witch one is kind of like a fan's account of the whole phenomenon, and then he talks to other fans, but he talks to other fans like Ben Rock, who did production design for it, and also who's the guy, Berlinger, the guy who directed Blair Witch 2. Mm-hmm. Joe Berlinger. Yeah, he also did Paradise Lost and Some Kind of Monster. He's a documentary filmmaker. Yeah. But he talks to, at the end of each chapter, there's like a remembering. So it's a page or so of all these people, talking about how they got into the Blair Witch. So as somebody who lived through it, it's pretty awesome. It's a really cool book. And the other one that I read, I got 4 of them. But the other one that I have also read since I got them, because they're quick reads, I read The Blair Witch and I read The Hitcher. And The Hitcher is more of an academic deconstruction of The Hitcher. So that one, so I have a feeling these books are going to be not all over the place, but they're not going to be consistent tonally. The other ones I have is The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Oh, I got that one too.
That was phenomenal.
I can't wait to dive into that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I got that one and Ghost in the Shell.
Okay, the Philip K. Dick is the other one that I got. There's the films of Philip K. Dick.
What?
But here's my
James
problem.
knows why I'm mad at him.
I know. Well, no. And
why did you get the Miko Kaiji?
Hear me out. Hear me out. Here's my problem with these books. They're fucking numbered. So me, the completionist that I am, I don't really care about the Ghost in the Shell one. I think there's a Lone Wolf and Cub one. But
yeah, there is. That's what I'm waiting on.
Damn books are numbered. So now my shelf is not complete. I'm going to need to get Ghost in the Shell, and I'm going to need to get these other stupid books that I don't really care about just because they're freaking numbered, and I'm not going to want to have that gap in numbers. But the thing is, at this sale, they were £5 each, which translates to like $6.50 or $6.30 or something. So they're pretty cheap books
when they go on sale.
Yeah, when they go on sale. And the 2 that I've read, I've loved. I mean, I was totally into both of them. So I was gonna dive into the Philip K. Dick next, but maybe I'll dive into The Man Who Fell to Earth.
I started the Philip K. Dick one once I finished the Miko Kaiji one, which I can't recommend that one enough. That book is so good, and because that one goes through her entire career, starting from pre, the Pinky Violence movies with the Stray Cat Rock films, through Female Prisoner Scorpion and Lady Snowblood, through her work in television and music post that, and it goes into what was going on with Japan and the film industry and television and all that during that time, which is very fascinating. And it was really good to read, especially since right before that I read Godzilla FAQ, which was just complete history of Godzilla through up into the MonsterVerse, and I think it came out pre-Shin Godzilla, because there wasn't a whole lot about any of that. But it is very interesting, especially since like Japan through the 60s. You know, I'm very always interested in how the film industries react to trends and stuff. So if you look through history, like my senior thesis in college, I wrote a 30-page piece on trends in 3D, and when you see 3D pops up, it's usually in reaction to something. And the first time it was reaction to television, you know, because what can movie theaters offer that TV can't? 3D. Well, in Japan, they didn't go that route. They went, what can we offer that TV can't? Boobs and violence. And so that's when you get like the Pinky Violence movies, all this great exploitation. The Yakuza movies were like coming straight out of the newspapers and very sensationalized. So like there was a lot of that at that time. And it's very interesting seeing like all these changes. And especially because the studio system during that time in Japan, it was strong after the war for like a while, pre-war and after World War II. But like around that time, it got completely dismantled. And it's very interesting hearing or reading it because, you know, from the perspective of like one property, which is Godzilla, and then reading it from the perspective of like an actual person and like what their journey through all that was. And she's a very interesting person in general. So it was cool reading. I'm very upset with you, James, for not getting that. But now I know next time they have a sale.
Yeah, next sale I've got to get all of them that I don't have because I can't have those stupid missing numbers on my shelf.
That's usually what I do. I usually get like 2 of the books every time they have one of those sales because they do sell them in the U.S. I believe Mondo sells copies of them, but they're like $25.
Yeah, same for Diabolic.
Yeah, it's better to just wait for the sales from Arrow and get that with a couple of Blu-rays, including Incident in a Ghostland, which is only available on Blu-ray from Arrow from England. So you got to import that, guys, because that movie fucking kills.
The movies that I got from that sale were I got Eniara. I think that's how you say it. It's about a spaceship that's heading. It's kind of like Passengers, where there's a spaceship heading to a new world, but it has problems, so it can't get there. So everybody stuck on this spaceship basically is on it for decades. And then I got Climax because it's Gaspar Noé. And I got Lords of Chaos, which is Rory Culkin as... I mean, honestly, Lords of Chaos is... I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's about the church burning, face shooting, head stabbing Norwegian death metal scene. It's a nutty movie. Anyway,
the true metal scene.
It's the thing is, I think that everything that happened in this damn movie is actually true. That's the scary thing. Like,
they based it off of like real stuff.
Yeah, and I knew some of that stuff. Like I knew that one guy from Mayhem had shot himself in the face, and then the other guys found him, you know, and they, you know, made necklaces out of his skull. You know, that's all in there too. But then there's other stuff, you know, that I didn't know, and then I looked up after I saw the movie, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is a pretty faithful telling of a pretty fucked up music scene.
I can't wait for my order to come in because whenever I do it, I save up for it because they have it every Easter. So, you know, I always get like a lot of titles that I've been like sitting on. But then this time I also pre-ordered Lucky McPhee's The Woman, which their English release of that comes with an extra movie that the US doesn't. So I have to wait till the end of the month for it to ship.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you haven't gotten it yet because I got mine probably a week and a half ago. But if you're waiting on a pre-order, then...
But it's okay because I got my copy of Beyond the Door from Diabolic DVD very quickly. Oh my God, do they ship quickly? Them in Twilight Time, dude. Twilight Time, like I ordered Monday, it was there by Wednesday.
That's the other thing.
Moment of silence.
All right, R.I.P. Twilight Time.
R.I.P. Twilight Time. Oh, I finally got Boxcar Bertha, though. I'm very excited for that one. But Beyond the Door, I haven't watched yet, but the feature-length documentary about Italian Exorcist ripoffs is worth the $35 alone. It is so good. And the only problem with it is that feature ends up costing you more because I don't know about anybody else, but it made me want to hunt down these movies that they talk about in it.
Ironic.
That's why I'm not allowed to watch Not Quite Hollywood anymore, because I keep just buying more exploitation movies every time I watch it.
Yeah. And also, I just got a new arrival that I've been going through. The Monsters box set.
Monsters.
Yeah, for those of you who don't...
The TV show?
Yeah, the TV show. Like, for those of you who don't know, so there was Tales from the Dark Side after Creepshow by George A. Romero and Stephen King. And after that, this is kind of a spin-off. It was Richard P. Rubenstein, who worked a lot with them. It's called Monsters, so it's basically an anthology show with the shtick being there's a different monster in every episode, and it has amazing special effects, most of which was done by Dick Smith, who did work on like The Exorcist and all kinds of movies. And it's a real showcase because you just never know what kind of monsters are going to pop up. And the casting is crazy. You know, like they have a list on the back. Like, let's see, Adrian Barbeau, Billy Drago, Steve Buscemi, Meatloaf, Tony Shalhoub, Tom Noonan. So yeah, So it's like I love 80s anthologies just because like they were so wild and like you just never knew who was going to guest star on an episode, and it's just been really fun watching all the episodes together.
Speaking of monsters, I was watching Monsters on Vidmark, that Vidmark channel on Roku. The Vidmark channel on Roku is now, I noticed it changed, that everything changed, the artwork, the name and everything, but I still have the app. It's now called Movie Sphere.
Huh.
And Movie Sphere is what Tribeca Shortlist, that subscription service, turned into. So I think, and I know that Tribeca Shortlist was bought by Lionsgate, or it was in bed with Lionsgate, and so is Vidmark. So I think Lionsgate may be consolidating their OTT subscription services, or their movie services, into Movie Sphere, because Vidmark, if you listen back to a few episodes ago, or we've talked about it several times, and you hear us talk about Vidmark, it ain't there anymore. It's now Movie Sphere. But it is, I think it's all the same content, and it's the same great selection and free stuff. It's just now it's called Movie Sphere.
That's good to know, because I'm always looking for new streaming avenues, because I can never have enough movies to watch, he says after he just bought a Jason Statham collection. I did it for Crank 1 and 2, man. I was jonesing for some weird.
We got anything else to talk about? Okay.
Recently, I got a book in the mail. It's called Midnight Pals. Not sure if you follow the account on Twitter. It's by Bitter Corella. Basically, it's like, what if all these famous horror authors had their own like Midnight Society, like from the TV show, the same names. So, you got like Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, and all these authors as kind of bickering kids, and like usually they get a lot off topic and into like fights and stuff about their stories. So it's a pretty funny parody, and the author made a physical book based off of the Twitter account, and it's especially if you know the kind of horror authors and also their horror directors as characters, it's a lot of fun. Like one of my favorite bits is John Carpenter repeatedly tells stories that the rest of the Midnight Society hates, but then like later they're like, oh, actually we love the story, and Kid John Carpenter is just like, how does that help me now? So there's a lot of horror and humor in there.
That hits too hard.
Yes, it does. But so it's Midnight Pals. It's a lot of fun.
Speaking of John Carpenter, I did just finally buy the Studio Canal 4K releases for The Fog, Escape from New York, Prince of Darkness, and
They Live.
Fuck me, dude. How did I forget They Live?
How many times have you bought Escape from New York? Just out of curiosity. Is it more times than I bought Night of the Living Dead?
No.
It's at least 6 times that I bought Night of the Living Dead.
Impressive.
We're close. I think I can think of at least 5 releases for Escape from New York. I think It's more so if I think about like movies I've rebought many times. Army of Darkness wins. I think I've bought in like 8 different editions of that over time. But like for currently own, I think it's The Thing that wins, because I think I have like 5 different copies of The Thing just on Blu-ray. Fuck you guys for putting out so many good editions of my favorite movies.
See, I upgrade. I always get rid of, like, the only Night of the Living Dead that I have right now is the Criterion one. And that's the last one I think I'm ever going to need.
But I can't if the Screen Factory, right, release has a 2K restoration, but the Arrow has a 4K restoration, but one is done with the cinematographer, but the other one's done in 4K. I can't. You see my issues here?
Yeah. Yeah. You're a hoarder. I see your issues.
Oh, dude, it's so
you're
bad.
A content hoarder.
It's so bad. But outside of hoarding, I did finally rent on Vudu The Wretched, which is perfect because of this week's episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, finally caught up to you guys. I'm usually the one that's behind with new releases too. But Quarantine's giving me some time, and thanks to video on demand, that helps too. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that movie. It was definitely like, nice little throwback with a nice little twists and whatnot. But I think my favorite thing is definitely The Wretched itself. I love the creature design.
Oh, yeah.
And like what they did with it.
And the practical effects.
Yeah, the practical effects were really good. Like when it comes out of like people's skin and stuff, that was super gnarls. I love that. There was definitely like some good genuine moments. I think I'm getting old though, because teenage antics and doesn't really do it for me. But then again, I've always hated Ferris Bueller, so I think I've just always been an old man. Not the movie Ferris Bueller, but like him as a person. And maybe that's what led to me not liking Matthew Broderick, or just maybe I don't like Matthew Broderick, and that's why. I don't know. We don't need a deep dive into the psychological nature between my hatred for Matthew Broderick.
Well, my favorite thing about The Wretched was probably the score, which is a good thing because we're going to segue into the second half of our show. So let's welcome our special guest. Say hello to Devin Burrows. He is the composer of the score to The Wretched, which we have been talking about for the last couple of weeks. How you doing, Devin?
Good. Nice to see you guys. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Let's start with the usual question. How did you get into film scoring?
Oh, wow. Great question. So I picked up the guitar at age 12 to, begin my study of music. I was a big fan of all kinds of rock and roll back then as a young kid. And I had this really great guitar teacher who was into everything from classical music to avant-garde jazz. And at that age, I was kind of like a sponge and just soaked up all of this information. I come from a really musical family. My dad played the piano. My sister teaches strings in the Detroit Public Schools back in Detroit. And that's how I first got into music. And in my 20s, I really got into classical scores. And, I study the modern classical composers. There's a great group here in Los Angeles, the Ravel Study Group, that gets together and studies classical scores. And in 2011, I scored a film called Deadheads, which is a horror comedy. And it's an orchestral score. And then most recently, I did The Wretched with the Pierce Brothers, also with the Pierce Brothers. So super excited about it.
I was about to say, it looks like you work with the Pierce Brothers a lot. You've scored most of their work so far.
That's true. I feel really fortunate to work with them. I treasure working with them. They have really interesting sensibilities about film, and I think we have sort of a similar sensibility. The score is very much sort of a throwback to thematic orchestral film scores, and we did try to put a unique sonic signature on it by using some interesting folk instruments for the woods and things like that. But it's a great collaboration working with those guys. They're awesome.
I was going to ask, what would you say, I actually saw The Wretched at the drive-in a couple weeks ago, so that made for a hell of an experience. And what would you say, what were your inspirations with the soundtrack, if anything in particular?
That's really cool. I went to the drive-in too on the opening night. at the Mission Tiki. A lot of the
Same.
cast and crew are there. Yeah, we're so excited that it's playing at drive-ins.
Yeah.
And this film's score is without a doubt influenced by the work of Bernard Herrmann and Psycho and Hitchcock scores. Of course, the film has a Hitchcock feel. It draws on a lot of genre influences that we could talk about. Poltergeist was a big influence, and I'm also just influenced by the avant-garde in general. I wanted to, and Brett and Drew wanted an acoustic sound for this film rather than sort of a synthesizer sound. So you can get really abstract with acoustic sounds, and so we recorded some interesting instruments to put an interesting signature on it.
And that was one of the things I really liked about the score, because you see it a lot recently where people are going heavy on the synth, which I love synth. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, so I will never complain about that. But anytime someone's like, oh yeah, it's a throwback, it's just like, oh, so you had synth in it. And while The Wretched had like a lot of throwback influence, it wasn't that aspect wasn't there, which was refreshing a little bit.
Now, how did that kind of leads to one of my questions too. It's clearly an independent picture with, not so much a micro budget, but a pretty small budget. But most of the score is orchestral. How much of a drain on the budget was hiring an orchestra to score it, like to actually play the music? Because, it's not just you sitting in your home studio with a synthesizer. There's a process to it. Yeah,
absolutely. So, we had a good budget for music, and some of it is synchronized. So there are really sort of three parts. Part of it is synchronized in the computer. And these days you have really good samples that can allow you to have an orchestra at your fingertips. The other part was recording acoustic instruments here in my studio. So we used sarangi and bowed psaltery to get some of the unusual sounds for the woods and for the witch. And third, for the soundtrack, I was able to travel to Germany to record with full orchestra. And it's pretty common that there are orchestras, throughout the world, session orchestras that you can hire. And they really belted out the low glissandi of my track with finesse. It sounded really great. So I feel grateful to have had that opportunity before COVID-19, because I think it's going to be less common now, and people are going to be more just working with a computer and in their studios. So,
how do you feel about the movie playing in drive-ins? I also rather liked how IFC billed it, like they did as a double feature with True Story, The Kelly Gang, as kind of a grindhousey type of thing, especially because in a way, the music is how do I put this, more pressuring, because you're in your car, so it's like on all sides of you.
I think it's great. I mean, we were going to get a limited theatrical, and the COVID thing happened. And, naturally we're a little upset about that, but I have no complaints. Like, there are people that are impacted by this thing much worse than we are. And then we got the drive-in thing, and it's surprising. That's the way people are going to see movies now. So I'm kind of jazzed that this, in some ways, the throwback music and the throwback Spielbergian kind of ideas in this movie get to be presented in the drive-in context, because I think it's appropriate. In some ways, it's just a fun movie. It's kind of a popcorn movie in some ways. So we couldn't be more excited that it's playing at drive-ins.
It's funny because IFC, The Wretched, actually won the box office 2 weeks in a row because it's the only thing playing right now. So, but it's still, it's doing really well. And I think that when it did win the box office, it won it from True History of the Kelly Gang. So IFC is kind of coming out smelling like a rose, putting this stuff in drive-ins like that.
Yeah, I think it's really, really smart. They've been great. They've been wonderful about the whole thing. And I'm just glad that people are able to watch it in social distance. And we're better than at a drive-in.
Jacob was just saying how he just went back to Mission Hills again. So he's going to the drive-in a lot these days.
Yeah, I saw the Vast of Night last night, which also being, kind of like a period film set in the 50s, made it very fitting. And yeah, and the crowd was even bigger than the last time I was there, and they were playing The Wretched on one of the other screens. I'm not sure if it was a complete sellout, but it was packed.
Yeah. I know a lot of the filmmakers have been going, and they've been sending pictures, and it's just there are a lot of people there.
That's awesome. And not only that, but it's also available on video on demand, which is how I watched it on Vudu. So you guys have, even during these times when there's not a lot of movie theaters are shut down, you guys still have that avenue of getting it out there and getting people to watch it, which is awesome. Because it is a fun movie, and it's great seeing these type of films being put out there.
Yeah, I'm glad people get to watch it from home and enjoy it from home as well.
Now, what is your composing process? I mean, do you sit down at a synthesizer to plot everything out before you take it to the orchestra? I mean, when you go to when the Pierce brothers deliver Picture Lock to you, what do you do then?
Wow, interesting. So for The Wretched, it actually started much earlier than that. They sent me the scripts pretty early on, and even when they were coming up with the ideas for this, the characters in this story, I would write a theme or two, a theme for The Witch's Curse or a theme for The Woods, and send it back to them. So there was this wonderful kind of creative feedback loop. And then, of course, eventually we had a spotting session and Picture Lock. Brett and Drew came over to my place. So another sort of important part of the creative process is having this musical instrument casting call. And, they came over and I spread out a bunch of folk instruments and interesting acoustic instruments because that was the vibe that we were going for. And as soon as they heard the Indian sarangi, they said, we need to have that in the movie. And I altered it a bit, acoustically, muted some of the strings, and digitally inside the computer to give it sort of a throaty, interesting sound. So that was a part of the process. And then, usually it varies by picture, right? And you're scoring to what's on the screen and trying to do something that's unique, something that will help tell the story and communicate the emotion of the picture. For this film, they wanted themes, and they wanted those themes to escalate. And I really like music that builds tension and releases tension. So one of the first things I did was write some themes, and then you try them out in different sections of the movie. So, maybe you try it over this big climactic part at the end, and you try it in a different context that's sentimental, that's earlier in the film. And that's how it began. And you're usually working with a computer and with a virtual orchestra. And then eventually you orchestrate that and, have it performed by orchestra, which I was lucky enough to do this time around.
We talked about how you have scored most of the Pierce brothers movies. How did that relationship start?
That's a great question. Yeah, so Brett and Drew and I are friends from a long time ago. So I don't know if you know, they'd be really interesting people to have on the podcast, by the way. Their dad did the photographic effects on the first Evil Dead film. Ooh. And so, all this sort of stop motion animation, this claymation stuff with heads melting and all of that. So they're of course really into practical effects, and this film is big on practical effects. So we met very early on in Detroit. And we used to go over to their dad's house, and we would watch. He worked for CBS Fox, and he had all these VHS and Betamax videos, and we'd watch The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits and stuff like that. And I don't know, Commando or Aliens.
Nice.
Yes.
So we have similar sensibility about music. And, when it came time for them to make Deadheads, we spoke, and, I was really deeply into orchestral music at that point. We kind of went separate paths for a while. They pursued filmmaking and I pursued music. And yeah, they gave me the opportunity to write the score for Deadheads, and it was just such a blast. And we did really well with it, so they came back again for The Wretched.
How'd they pitch you on the movie?
Well, we discussed it pretty early on, and they just sort of sent me the script, and I read it. And I remember being really... I thought that the whole creature feature plus fairy tale kind of vibe was something kind of fresh. I liked that they got people invested in the characters, and that's something that they like to do. I liked that it wasn't monochromatic in tone, and that there were some parts that were kind of sentimental, and it wasn't just completely dour and dark for the whole film. And that was one thing that they were very clear about, is that they wanted a score that varied in tone. So, if you think about Jaws or any number of other pictures, there are portions of the score and of the film that are sentimental, where you do character building and you're kind of more invested when things start to go south.
Yeah.
So those were all things that appealed to me about it.
I describe The Wretched to people as kind of like Goonies meets The Conjuring. And I think that speaks to what you're talking about, how it's very varied tonally. And the score totally reflects that. You've got parts of it that are almost John Williams-y, and then you've got parts of it that are like Joe Bashari, the screechy violin kind of stuff. Who influences you? I mean, what composers, not so much trying to emulate, but who, did you have like a sonic lookbook when you were trying to put together your score?
That's a good way to put it, sonic lookbook. So definitely Bernard Herrmann, as we talked about, Jerry Goldsmith, the greats. I think Jerry Goldsmith is probably my favorite film composer of all time. I also go back a little further to the modern classical composers like Stravinsky and Ravel. Those are the composers that a lot of big Hollywood composers that we know about, like John Williams, listened to and influenced the scores that we've heard. And while that music is old, it's, from the early 20th century in a lot of cases, some of it's pretty horrific. Like, Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring is about ritual sacrifice. So that is definitely an influence. As far as contemporary films and horror films, I really like what Mark Corvin has done for The Lighthouse. I just watched The Lighthouse the other day. I had a blast watching it. It's a good movie.
We love The Lighthouse.
The perfect isolation movie.
You've seen The Witch, correct?
I haven't seen The Witch. I need to see it.
That's next, yeah. Because his score for The Witch is yeah. I'm a score junkie, so that's usually the first thing I notice about movies is a score. So yeah, definitely check out The Witch. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. I'm going to put that on my list. Mark Corvin's great, and his use of acoustic instruments is wonderful. And The Others, Amenabar's score for The Others is great. Everything that Johan Johannesson's put out, I really like. I don't know if you guys have seen Thoroughbreds, but Eric Freelander is this jazz.
Oh yeah,
I liked it.
I like that movie, and I thought
loved it.
Thought the score was great. Somewhat avant-garde and also acoustic in nature, and effectively otherworldly and fun. So that's some stuff that I'm listening to.
Have you seen Swiss Army Man?
I haven't.
Oh, that's an amazing.
I love
score.
that movie.
It's probably my favorite score of the last few years. It's the what's the group called? Manchester Orchestra. It's two guys, and I forget their names, but their band is Manchester Orchestra, and it's all vocals. So they're singing the parts, but they're layering it, so it's almost like this symphony of vocals. And they do the Jurassic Park theme, but it's all vocals. And then they do that. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? But it's just these layering of vocal. It's incredible.
And it's all like softly sung too. So it's just like da 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 da, and you just like hear it in the background, and it's just like so hypnotic.
You know what the movie's about?
Harry Potter is a farting corpse.
Yeah, it's Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe, and Daniel Radcliffe is dead, and basically, yeah, the Harry Potter, for being a corpse the whole time, he nails that performance. But he's farting and burping, and Paul Dano's carrying him around, and there's much more to it than that, because obviously it's a 90-minute movie. Yeah. But it's just as quirky as the score. It's that one should be on your list too.
For a movie about a farting corpse, it really is just like a beautiful film about relationships and self-discovery, and it's really weird like how much like you can see in that movie of like how good it is relationships, because at the end of the day it is a movie about a farting corpse, you know, whose flatulence is used to turn him into a jet ski, basically. Like, it's super out there.
That's the first like 10 minutes though.
Yeah,
it gets dark.
Yeah.
It gets dark fast.
It goes many places.
It sounds like it could be like Weekend at Bernie's meets The Lighthouse.
Yeah,
basically, yeah,
a little bit.
And they're all on Amazon Prime, so if you need to stream it, go for it.
That's cool. I'm coming out of here with good recommendations. I'm going to put these on the list.
And I was actually wondering, you mentioned Johan Johansson. Did you see Mandy, which had his final score?
Yes.
That was coming.
Yes, I really liked Mandy. I quite enjoyed it. I watched, speaking of films that are with, oh my God, why is his name escaping me? I watched Color of Space last night.
Oh, nice. Richard Stanley.
Yeah, Richard Stanley, yes. And I enjoyed that one too. And also sort of has a pink motif, throwback 80s. Lots of things are pink and purple and orange and neon these days.
Neon.
But I enjoyed it. You know, I thought it was a good take on Lovecraft. I got a kick out of it.
Now, what do you think of the score for that one?
I enjoyed the score. Yeah, it's the avant-garde saxophonist. His name escapes me, but he's a really talented guy. I liked it.
Now, you kind of lightly touched upon it earlier, but we're of course in the middle of some pretty extreme times, and we're still in the middle of it, so we don't know what's happening on the other side so much when it comes to film production and all that. So what is some of the big things that you are seeing that are coming out of this? You mentioned, being able to go to Germany and record with an orchestra, and that possibly not being within the books in the future or possible. What are some major things that you kind of see coming out when we come out the other side of this, essentially?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of composers and people that are in the industry, and a lot of people. One, work is slowing down, of course. A lot of big budget features are just sort of shelved for now, and features of all kinds, because people just can't really be together. And I think that people are going to be working from home quite a bit and alone, which is really not that uncommon for composers. I mean, a lot of the work you do is sort of in isolation. I don't know if you've seen that movie Altered States.
Oh yeah.
He goes, I don't know. He goes into the isolation take and sees some kind of primeval vision or something. But I mean, I think that composers are accustomed to working that way. But yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot more scores that are just inside the box, as they say, meaning, mostly produced with computers and people recording at home. It opens up interesting avenues to record with people. There are plenty of session musicians that are recording from home now. So I bet you're going to hear smaller ensembles, people that are recording remotely with ensembles, not in real time. I think that's the way things are headed.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I work in television mostly, so I've had a very boring few months now, and it's interesting seeing, especially the dynamics, because I'm more on the pre-production on set side of things. So for me, everything's completely shut down. Whereas I have a lot of friends that work in post, and stuff like that. And it's interesting seeing what little work there is to be had right now is getting snatched up real quick, and how the dynamics are changing. A lot of people working remotely or from home. So But like you said with composers, so you see like a lot of like music being recorded, kind of like how we record the podcast right now, like just talking via Skype and people doing their things separately and then sending it off, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a little tricky with the latency doing those types of collaborations, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, people can record in their studios and collaborate that way. I really think that we're going to see some really interesting creative gems out of the pressure of this COVID-19 thing as people are in isolation and just focusing on their creative passions. And maybe they're not able to work on a film, but they focus on other creative endeavors. So maybe there's a little bit of a silver lining there.
Going to see a lot of isolation movies coming out with this.
Oh, yeah.
Already seen a lot of short films being like, oh, yeah, and this is all about like the isolation and, you know, opens up with the alarm clock going off type deals. So many.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some trends after this.
But we've been recording this way for years, so we're ahead of our time.
Oh, yeah.
We were training for this.
The only difference in us recording is Jacob's hair and my beard. That's about it. It just keeps getting longer and longer.
We talked about your influences a little bit. Who are the guys working today, like, you know, the young hotshots? Who excites you about the guys who are doing it right now?
Yeah, I mentioned Eric Friedlander. I'm really taken back by his scores. I think he's great. Have you guys seen One Bedroom, 1BR?
No, but I've heard about it.
Worth watching. It played at Fantasia Fest along with The Wretched, and the composer for that is Ronen Landa. I like his music. It's a thematic score, and it's definitely worth watching. I quite enjoyed that one. I'm trying to think of some other up-and-coming folks. You know, have you guys seen another one that played on the festival circuit that I think we saw at Fright Fest was Daniel Isn't Real?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
we love it.
I like that movie, you know?
Same.
Aesthetically, a little like The Exorcist, maybe. Definitely owes something to Aronofsky, Jacob's Ladder. I like all the genre influences. And the music there is by this avant-garde electronic musician, Clark. I enjoyed that score. Those are a few examples.
I like that soundtrack so much. I actually got the import vinyl record.
For Daniel Isn't Real?
Yeah. Yeah, I got it
awesome.
at Amoeba.
Aw, I miss Amoeba.
Oh, R.I.P. Sorry.
Well, no, we're coming back. I used to work at Amoeba, so, but no, it's coming back. It'll be, but yeah, 6400 Sunset's gone. Ugh.
That's a shame. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Who do you think would win in a fight, Tom York or Johnny Greenwood?
he loves asking this.
Not that they'd ever fight, but
Tom York or Johnny Greenwood? This is a toughie. I'm thinking Tom York would take it. He's little, but you know, I think he's like scrappy.
have you heard his score for the Suspiria remake?
No, actually, that's on my list of things to watch.
I was hoping that it would come down to, at the Oscars, Tom York versus Johnny Greenwood, because Johnny Greenwood did You Were Never Really Here that year, which is incredible as well, but I don't think either got nommed, so boo.
Yeah.
You Were Never Really Here should have been nominated more, because that was...
Yeah.
It was the best score that year, yeah. It was great.
It was such an angry and violent movie for almost having no violence in it. But...
Yeah.
Oh, no violence? Are you...
Well, I mean, it was sparing.
Never mind.
It was sparing.
Most of the violence that happened in that movie happened off screen. We mostly saw the after effect of it, you know?
Yeah, actually, you're right. You're right. You did.
But also, Lynn Ramsey needs more accolades.
Let's wrap this up. What do you got coming up here, Devin? What can we look for from you?
Well, one thing is the release of the soundtrack to The Wretched. It's being mastered for digital platforms as we speak. So more to come there. Stay tuned.
Awesome.
Is there going to be a vinyl release?
Anything's possible. Yeah.
Because I would get it if I could. Just saying.
I would love to do physical media, and I'm super excited about the digital release. And I mean, I've been working on some creative music of my own, making some acoustic instruments from scratch, and also just kind of working on this project that I've been working on for a little while. It's sort of Bernard Herrmann meets experimental hip hop Ivy Lab. So
Wow.
yeah, so once I get the soundtrack out and take care of a few things there, I'm looking forward to releasing some solo music.
Now, do you rap on that project, or are you just doing the music for it?
I grew up with hip hop as a kid, but no, I don't rap.
Cool. Well, Devin, thank you very much for taking a little bit out of your Sunday to talk to us.
Yeah, that was fun.
And we're gonna wrap this up. Our theme song is by Restless Spirit, so go give them some love. And our artwork is by Chris Fisher, so go give him some love. Devin, where can they find you on the social medias or website? Where can people find you if they want more Devin Burrows?
Yeah, absolutely. DevinBurrows.com and _Devin Burrows on Instagram.
Cool. And where can they find you, Jacob?
You can find me on Twitter at @JacobDavison_. That is at JACOBDAVISON_. And you can also find my writing with the Parcast Network.
Cool. And you, Korea?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Korean Barbecue. That's CORREIAN BBQ. You can also find Ion Horror now on Instagram. Look who finally made an Instagram account. Yeah, we're so lazy with that stuff, but we promise to post intermittently or as frequent as we remember that it's there. Luckily, I get notifications all the time on my phone now, so I posted a couple things so far, so it's just starting out, guys.
Cool. And me, you can find on Twitter at Cinema Verite. That's like verite, but with fear, so it's FEARITE. You can find all three of us at the Ion Horror Facebook page, the iHorror Facebook page, or we also have the Ion Horror Twitter, which we're on a roll. We got the Twitter a couple weeks ago, and now we got the Instagram. We're covering it all.
Just wait for it. We're going to have an Ion Horror Pinterest. We're going to have an Ion Horror MySpace. We're going to have an Ion Horror Tinder, Club Penguin. We're going to be every social media platform.
So, we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Devin, for hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys. That was a blast.
We will see you next time. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
And I'm Devin Burrows.
Keep your eye on horror.